Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It's been a little while. I've gotten, I think, a couple videos out sporadically over like the last week to 10 days, but work has just been insane, and then yesterday I was off, and I had lots of plans to record things, and then I went down a video game rabbit hole yesterday and didn't record anything. So, on my 35th birthday, I am here to talk to you guys. Yes, it's my birthday. I turned 35 today. Never in a million years I think 35 would look like this at all. But because I was lazy yesterday, I've got to capitalize on another off day today for my birthday and talk to you guys about some of the stuff that I've missed and been slacking on getting up and out. And first and foremost, I gotta go back to the world of Ravka and Netflix and all you book fans. I did a little review for the first 3 episodes. Now I gotta tell you my thoughts on the whole series. And just a slight spoiler before we start, I love this show. It's so damn good. Oh my goodness. Let's not waste any time, man. Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free and then maybe a little spoilery at the end into Netflix's Shadow and Bone Season 1. And like I said, I love this show, and I come with immense gratitude to all of you book fans that I've been interacting with over the last couple months, from the trailer reactions to the first 3 episode reviews when it dropped like 2 weeks ago. Jeez, I can't believe 2 weeks has passed already. But I really do owe you guys so much gratitude, because you guys hyped this show up after I freaked out to that first trailer, man. Those Volcra, I wasn't ready for it because I didn't know anything about this world. And now I know much more about this world, mostly from you guys, which really helped me follow along with Shadow and Bone. And I guess we'll start with the negatives, because there's so few of them for me. We might as well just get them out of the way and talk about all the good stuff. But I know I keep bringing up Game of Thrones, and while this show is totally different than Thrones, it does have a lot of similarities in the sense that we're following a bunch of different characters that are scattered all over a giant map. And very much like Game of Thrones, the show does not do a great job of really telling you where everything is. I think the show does a wonderful job of introducing you, to the Grisha and to the world. But I swear to you, I have no clue where I was most of this show until I talked to some of you guys after that first 3 episode review. And some of you guys kind of pinpointed like where things were, and I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense. And then, of course, I just started looking at a map of Ravka. But the show itself, I didn't think did a great job in really giving you an idea of where everything was. Like, it really just felt like Ravka was split in half by this fold. Which you can see on the screen behind me if you're unfamiliar with the show. And it was like one half and another, and it's really just like if this is the whole map, it's a portion here, and then you have areas up and above, and islands, and there's real ocean. That was the other thing. I thought the fold was on water, and then it turns out to be on land. So I think just general locationing was kind of tough to follow with the show, but outside of that, really outside of that, I didn't have any complaints with this show. Outside of not knowing exactly where I was at all times, I thought the show really hit, like, start to finish, man. Like, the characters, and again, much like Thrones, these fresh young faces that you're unfamiliar with just suck you into this world. And like I said, I thought the show did a really good job of establishing the world we were in and the groups of people that we were with. And because of all of that, that's what got me in, even though I may have been lost here and there. And shout out goes to series creator and showrunner Eric Heisserer. Clearly, I'm assuming he must be a book fan, because many of you guys have mentioned how on point this show is, from its casting to its hybrid story, right? Like this show, if you're unfamiliar and you didn't see my first 3 episode review, the show covers 2 book series. One, Shadow and Bone, which is the original, and a spin-off series called The Six of Crows. And a good chunk of our group is from that world, and the stuff that we see them doing here is not from that book. But That being said, I mean, just based on things that you guys have told me, it certainly seems like Heisserer was locked in on this, whether he read the books after getting the job or this was a passion project for him. Again, you hardcore fans, if you know anything about Eric Heisserer and how close he is to the material, I would love to hear that. But I would imagine that he has to be pretty close, because based on what you guys have told me, I think the show really does adapt the material really well. And I'm currently talking to my girlfriend about maybe starting to read the books. She was like, "You want to do like a book club?" And I was like, I struggle reading when there's no giant pictures every page. But, people have been talking so highly about this. I was like, maybe we'll dive in. And I love the way that Heisserer approaches the show. He goes after it big. And this world is big, and you get the sense of how big everything is, but he does a wonderful job of shrinking everything down into these little groups that we have, and seeing the world from their points of view, whether it's, you're at the little palace, or you're on the front lines, or, you're in, some seedy neighborhoods. Like, no matter where you're coming from in Ravka, no matter which side of the fold you're on, I think the show does a really good job of kind of giving that sense of everybody's perspective and how everybody sees what's happening, from its history to its current, events. And the other thing, too, that I think the show does wonderfully is the visuals. I mean, the visual effects in this show are awesome. I mean, we know Netflix will spend the money, man. And they certainly did not pull any punches with what they had. I think, look, there's room for bigger budgets, and you could probably do bigger, crazier things, but for, like I said, a big world, but, these smaller stories, I thought the visuals really sunk up. And when you got into, your light and dark powers, when you're looking at both Alina with her light powers and Kirigan with his shadow powers. Like, that stuff visually is beautiful. Like, in the trailer when he scratches her arm and that light beam shoots out, man. Or just the fold from the outside or the fold from the inside. And when you get to the end of this season, some of the stuff they do inside the fold visually is just breathtaking and wonderful. So from a production standpoint and a story standpoint, I really think Heisserer and his team knocked this thing out the park. Like, for a non-book reader, you got me super, super invested and super, super interested in this world that I was literally hanging on every episode and every word, where I was just like, give me more, give me more. And you get to the end, while the finale is so unbelievably satisfying, I'm just sitting here like, I need more now, and this is why I might start reading the books. But I think it is a satisfying watch start to finish. I think it's paced well, and everything from the production standpoint is just wonderful. But the reason that this show works so damn well is its cast, and like I said, it's a cast of mostly fresh young faces that we're not necessarily familiar with. For me, Ben Barnes was the first thing that kind of pulled me in, because I was like, ooh, man, like Prince Caspian or Jigsaw. Like, I've been watching Ben Barnes for years, so anytime he pops up and he was in all that black, I was like, ooh, Ben Barnes might be swinging to the dark side. And I like when Ben Barnes is evil. He's just such a good villain. But all that stuff, is the things that kind of initially brought me in. But the rest of this cast, who I was unbelievably unfamiliar with previously, so good. So to wrap up the rest of this non-spoiler review, we're just going to go by cast and characters. And we'll start with our two leads, Jessie May Lee and Archie Renaux, who play Alina and Mal, and they're our way into this world, right? They're where we start, and what I thought was so well done was their relationship. And just the chemistry that those two have. Like, casting, if casting involved bringing characters together and seeing how they play off each other, casting director crushed it, because Jessie May Lee and Archie Renaux are mind-blowingly good, and they bring so much depth to a relationship that, spans a long time. These are two kids who were orphaned because of Jessie May Lee. Alina, for sure, was orphaned by the fold, and I'm pretty sure Mal was as well. But, they're these two orphans that grow up in this orphanage, and they are best friends, but there's more there. Like, you can tell, it's one of those things where I love the fact that the show definitely has, I think, love interests for our characters throughout, but it's not something that it dives full into, and you can tell that there is definitely something between Alina and Mal that's more than friendship, but it's one of those things where it's not like a lust or a sexual, tension or attraction. Like, it is a deep-rooted, profound love for each other that goes past sexual or relationshipy love, right? Like, this is the type of love of someone who, no matter where you go in the world, like, they are always with you. And, of course, relationships like that can carry that kind of romantic love aspect, and the way both Meili and Renaux, balance and juggle that stuff throughout the show to never really tip their hand one way or the other of exactly how their characters feel, but just the way that they play off each other and the way they react when they see each other after long periods. I guess that's the one other thing that the show doesn't do too well, is that it time jumps pretty big, like months and months and months pass over the course of these episodes, but that sets up our actors to have these wonderful moments where you're like, it feels like they haven't seen each other in a long time, but everything is like they haven't, it's like they've never not seen each other, you know what I mean? And it's so natural, and I just loved watching their relationship, and their interactions and their chemistry, and then watching where their characters went through the main arc. Mal's storyline is more of one of the secondary arcs, but because it's tied to Alina's, which is one of the main big through points of the show, Mal gets kind of brought into everything, and I love his tenacity and his desire and his ability to just never stop if it means saving Alina or making sure Alina is safe. And they get multiple moments in this show where they put specifically Mal in a lot of peril, and you're like, why are we trying to kill Mal every episode? But that drama to his story really allows Renaux to go to some wonderful places, and I just loved his performance. Now, when you're talking Jessie Meili, like I said, she's one of our big two. With Alina and Kirigan, there are two big, powerful Grisha, and her story is fascinating because she, did everything she could not to be tested or find out that she was a Grisha when they were kids. That thing that you see in the trailer where Kirigan, kind of cuts her arm or scratches her arm and the light comes out. It's a thing that they do to kids to find out if they are magical or not. And she does everything she can to not find out because she doesn't want to get taken away from Mal. So how that then leads to finding out that she is a Grisha and how that works with her story. And again, the time lapses. It's one of those things where I think on Alina's story specifically, it would have been nice if that was a little bit cleaner or clearer, because she goes through some big emotional swings. There's a palace. The palace in Ravka is, a palace where your king and queen and all your royals kind of are, and then there's the little palace, which is where all the Grisha train and hang out. And, seeing Alina in both, Ravka on the front lines, because she's a cartographer, so she's part of the war efforts, to, finding out that she's a Grisha and what that means, and going to the little palace and having somebody, stop the communications between her and Mal to the point where it's like, man, I can't believe Mal's not talking to me, and vice versa. Same goes for Mal's character as well. But the way that she handles that specifically, and because of where she is, Alina gets to go to some interesting places, from a character standpoint, and I really enjoyed watching where she went, even though some of her decisions I was like, come on girl, like, do better. But at the same time, like, you're talking about someone who has been in one place and now you're in this lavish, like, wonderful place, and your best friend is MIA, not because of their own fault, but because someone's not letting you know that they're trying to talk to you. And then she kind of just falls down that rabbit hole and kind of just plunges all into the Grishaverse. And to being a Grisha and learning how to control her powers and use her powers, and that stuff, while again maybe a little sped up because I feel like they cover a lot of ground. Book readers, how much of the books did they cover in this show? Because it definitely seemed like there are some time jumps, but I love watching Alina with the Grisha, and I love watching Alina when she is brought out of the palace and into the main storyline around the fold toward the back half of the season, and everything that goes on with her from that point forward. And there is one thing with her that I was told is not very accurate to the books that involves some like antlers But the visual that they created, I was here for it, man. I was like, that is freaking, like, one, horrifying if you're the person, because it's kind of like body dysmorphic type stuff. But two, like, badass looking when you are Alina's character. So I love that character. I love that storyline. Obviously, it's one of her main storylines. But Jessie and Archie Renaux absolutely crush. Now, if you're going to go from those two, most logically, it would have to be Ben Barnes, because Ben Barnes is directly tied to Alina's story, and there's a lot of mystery around Mr. Ben Barnes. You guys said that he had a second name. Learning that, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, oh my. Like, that's where we're going with this character? Okay, I'm here for it. Like, Ben Barnes' character is one of those characters that's shady, right? Like, you can tell there's something off about him, but when you get the reveal of what it is, super satisfying and really sets the character up for the third act of the show and where they take Kirigan as a character. There's so much surface stuff for him early in the season, and then so much like rich material at the end where you're like, damn, I feel like we could have done a whole season just Ben Barnes' Kirigan, man. Like, there are some really interesting places for that character to go, and some really interesting places for Ben Barnes to take it. And where we end up with Kirigan, I'm here for it, man. Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but what we get with that, I'm here for it, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And when it comes to Barnes' performance, he's perfect for a role like this because he can play on both sides of that line, right? Like, he can play a good guy. He definitely plays, I think, a way better bad guy. But the fact that he can kind of bounce between the two allows him to walk this tightrope where you really don't know what his true intentions are or what he really is after or which way he's gonna go. And his powers are freaking cool, man. The way he can just suck the light out of a room the same way, well, not the same way, different looking way, but the way Alina can light up a room with her powers, the way Kirigan and the mastery that he has over these powers is able to just suck the light out of a room or dismember people. There are some really cool things he can do with his magic, and overall, I just thought Ben Barnes crushed it, and like I said, I can't wait to see where we go with Kirigan. And within this storyline and these three characters kind of arcs, there are a bunch of side characters. Mal's two buddies are excellent anytime that they pop into the show. I love what they give, and their arc is very important, specifically to some of the emotional beats for Mal's character. I think they do a great job. And then when you're over at the little palace with Alina, there's a lot of fascinating people. I love the entire Grisha world. I love watching them train. I love the Kafkas that they wear that are like bulletproof and stuff. Like, all of that stuff around that is really, really interesting. And there's a bunch of different Grisha and folks that we meet inside of those storylines. But the big standout from that group for me is Daisy Head, who plays Genya Safin. She kind of is like a makeup artist magician, right? Like, her magical powers allow you to do things like take scars away and just, can take like a little thing, go whoosh, and like makeup just appears. So her power set's kind of cool, but her relationship with Alina is something that I really, really love in the show, specifically when Alina is at the little palace. She has very few allies there, and Genya ends up being one, and I just really enjoy their relationship, and I enjoy the way that they tee everything up around their story to give you the payoffs that you get by the end, and there's some good gut punches inside of that main storyline that do, tie to Genya and what she does. But I think she does an absolutely excellent job. And the only other person that I would call out, I think, from this main course of the storyline is Baghra, played by Zoey Wannamaker. She's fantastic. Now, I know in the books I've heard that she is blind or doesn't have eyes, but I've also been told that there's a period of time where she does, so maybe she'll lose her eyes. I don't know. Eyes, no eyes, whatever. Zoey Wannamaker's fantastic, man. Like, she crushes. Baghra is a badass, and she's the person who is trying to train Alina to learn how to use her powers. Her powers are so, while so powerful, because she hasn't been training or even been aware of her powers her entire life, she has a lot to do really quick, and Baghra is that person that pushes her and drives her to get her to where she needs to be, and how that power set plays into the fold, and the concept of destroying the fold, and how all of that kind of plays, and the things that Baghra knows and passes on to Alina super, super important and all things that I really, really dug a lot. Now, outside of that main storyline, which from what I've been told by you guys is the Shadow and Bone storyline, I am all about the Six of Crows storyline. You guys told me this in the trailers and in my initial review that the Six of Crows was the book that everybody really liked the most. Like, it seems like there's way more fans to that book and that set of characters, and you guys were not wrong. These Six of Crows characters, which feature Kaz, Inej, Jesper, Nina, and Matthias. Oh, they're freaking awesome, dude. They were the best part of the show for me. And while Nina and Matthias are kind of sidelined from being part of that main part of the story, they're off on a boat, and they got their own thing going on. We'll talk about them in a moment. That group, though, of 5, both of those storylines, by far my favorite. Everything that has to do with Kaz and, his crows, Inej and Jesper. It's so freaking good. They're the most interesting characters. There's definitely more things hidden about these characters than any of the others, and maybe some of that is the fact that this maybe is taking place before events of their book series. But just everything with these 5 is just my favorite stuff. I think you get the best performances out of this group, and I think you have the most interesting characters. And when it comes to the group as a whole, I love Kaz, played by Freddie Carter. He crushes. I mean, there is so much mystery to his character and so many, motivational driving factors to his character that we don't know about. We don't know anything about his past. And you guys have mentioned that we will learn there are reasons that he has gloves and the cane and the limp, but we haven't touched on any of that. And maybe that's some of the stuff I guess I like the most, is there's the most mystery around this group. And it feels like there are really interesting backstories to each one of these characters. But when it comes to Kaz, I just love what we get from Freddie Carter. He's so mysterious, and he plays mysterious perfectly. And I just like the way that he can take control of a situation, the way that he comes up with his plans and the things around his group, and the way that he cares about his group, specifically Inej. Their relationship, I think, is one of the most fascinating in the entire show. Much like Mal and Alina, it feels like there is more than just a romantic or sexual tension between them. There is something deep-rooted that connects them on a far deeper level. And watching the way that they interact with each other, and specifically because, Inej comes from the menagerie, which is right next to Kaz's kind of casino type club. And the fact that Inej comes from there and it technically is owned by the menagerie, all that stuff I really find interesting, and I can't wait to see where we go with all that stuff. But when it comes to their storyline and what their goal is inside of the series, and this is one of those things where you guys tell me what you thought. I thought it was really, really dope how they end up intersecting with our Shadow Bone story, and what Kaz's job and mission is for the group, and kind of how that all plays out and how they adapt. We get to see them on a couple missions, and I love watching the way they all bring different skill sets and different things. Kaz is totally the brains of the entire operation, and then you have someone like Inej, played by Amita Suman, who is my favorite character in the show. I said it in my initial thoughts review. Homegirl Batman's better than Batman, man. There's literally a second where Jesper is talking to her, and he literally only gets here. She's still in his periph, and when he turns back a split second later, gone. Gone. She's so cool, and you guys too have mentioned that she's super badass, to the point where they call her the Wraith. And again, I feel like we're only scratching the surface, but there are some really, really cool action sequences for Inej, specifically her big one at the end. And it's awesome, but also feels like there's a lot of room for growth or room to do more with that character and her skill set. But I think Suman does just a wonderful job. Again, plays the mysterious card really, really well, and they put her in some cool situations, right? Part of their story is tied to a circus type event, and her and Jesper kind of get pulled in to get inside the little palace. That whole bit is awesome. I love anytime they're on a mission, whether they're breaking in or she's doing anything. I mean, throwing knives, fighting people. really, really cool, and I thought Amita Suman did a wonderful, wonderful job. And then, of course, you have Kit Young, who plays Jesper, and he's, again, one of the other people who is my favorites because he's a trick shot, right? Like, he's got that, dead shot aim. Like, he doesn't miss. And there's a really cool sequence where he is going up, like, against a Grisha, and you're like, their Kafkas are bulletproof. What's a bullet guy gonna do? And how they play that, and the way that he utilizes that pinpoint accuracy in that scene, so freaking cool. And I just love Jesper's entire demeanor. And I like that he brings some representation to the show, being gay, and like the way that they play with that, and the fact that his needs for lust and needs for gambling sometimes get in the way of what they're doing and how that plays into his story. Like, there are times where it's like, there's a stable boy that he kind of is interested in at one point, and I'm like, don't do it, Jesper. Like, if you go over there, something bad's gonna happen. And the way that whole plays out, it brings a lot of levity and comedy to the show, and not like flat out comedy, but he lightens the show, man. He's fun to be around when they're going through the fold. And the way that they travel through the fold, there's two ways that we see people travel inside of the fold, and both ways are terrifying and so cool. But watching how he, reacts in that scenario, and the thing that he has to bring to, like, that whole aspect, like, there's something that involves a goat, and his relationship with this goat. Awesome, love that stuff. I'm like, that's the stuff I mean when you say like levity and lightness to the show. Like, he brings something that's a little funny and humorous because he's got one of the best personalities on the entire show. But just watching how he deals with all these different things, and how his plans don't always go the way they're supposed to, but how they may or may not work out for the group. I just loved all that, and I thought that Kit Young just did a wildly fascinating job. Like, anytime Jesper's on screen, like, I'm super interested and fascinated because that whole group of three is just so interesting. And then when you add in the other two, who I again did not know was part of the Six of Crows, but you guys enlightened me, the Nina and Matthias stuff is awesome, and it's one of the few storylines that really gets into some of the like tension between like people who come from different places. Like, it's one of these things where, again, Netflix does a wonderful job of just diversifying the show. I mean, it really doesn't seem to matter what color anybody is on the show, unless, of course, you're Alina, who is a Shuhan, or part Shuhan. Like, her family was from Shuhan, which is, like, I guess, southwest in Ravka. And when they crossed, their parents died. She ended up in the orphanage where she was kind of, where she grew up, where all these other people are that don't like the Shuhan. Outside of that, there really isn't, like, any racial tensions, but there are definitely territory tensions in the show. And the Nina and Matthias, side really pull that in. I mean, one, people don't like the Grisha, so you have that whole thing going from the get-go. And the fact that Nina is a Grisha, and she's a heart something, I can't remember what it's called, but she basically can control a heart. Like, she can slow it, she can speed it, she can warm a body, she can revive somebody, and she can kill somebody. So she is like one of the more interesting, threatening Grisha. But knowing that, like, the way people dislike her, and then you have this whole bit with this land of Fjerda, which kind of, gives me a bit of a, like, kind of Vikings vibe, and it's very cold and snowy in Fjerda. I also love the different climates that and locations that we're at throughout the show. But, it ends up where, like, Matthias and the Fjerda, like, they hunt Grisha, and she kind of gets captured by him when she's supposed to be meeting up with Kaz and everybody, and ends up on this ship, and then the ship crashes, and these two end up having to try to survive together. And watching their relationship, one, the flirtatiousness to their relationship is there from the absolute start, man. Like, even though Matthias talks a lot of hatred, and even Nina, there is definitely some sort of attraction going on to them right from the get-go. And it's one of the more interesting things about their relationship and about their chemistry on screen that I just thought worked so well. Where it was like, you can tell these two don't like each other, but want to, like, rip each other's clothes off. And when that boat crashes and they've got to kind of survive on their own, you get to kind of dive into that a little bit. And the way that, like, Matthias is so uncomfortable around Nina, especially, like, when they're soaking wet and they're in an area that's freezing cold, like, body heat is the way to warm up, and the fact that she can warm somebody with her powers, like, there's all this tension and back and forth. That whole scene is so awesome, because you have the tension of, like, a Grisha and a Fjerdan, and the tension of a man and a woman, and the sexual tension, and also, like, the fact that you have, like, prisoner and captor, but, like, they totally want each other, and, like, watching the two of them play that out is just wonderful. And our actors here, Danielle Galligan, who, ironically enough, is from Game of Thrones, who plays Nina, and Calahan Skogman, who plays Matthias. They're awesome. I love their relationship. I love watching them on screen, and I love that their relationship is strained and then kind of in a neutral, almost like consensual manner, to strained again. The way their relationship and story is flowing, and the way that they kind of swap places to a degree at certain moments, and the fact that they're in the situation they're in all because Nina's trying to do something good. I just thought it was wildly fascinating. I can't wait to see where we go with those two and how they will intersect with Inej and Kaz. Like, all of the pieces have been set, and now it's just execute it and let me see it. But it really is one of these shows where the cast is just so damn good. It pulls you in so deep into the show that you're able to get past some of the things that, are a little wonky, with the time jumps and not necessarily always knowing where I am on the map. Like, that stuff you can kind of ignore and push to the side and go, yeah, they could have done that better, but did you see all the stuff that they did and how interesting these characters are? And that's the thing for me. Anytime you have a good story or a good book series, it's because the characters are going to drive it, and the characters are the things that pull you in and get you interested. And this group of characters, both from the Shadow and Bone and from the Six of Crows, are just tremendous, man. So I absolutely love this show. If you are a fan of Game of Thrones, you're looking for something to scratch that fantasy itch, Shadow and Bone is the way to go, man. This show is great. Everybody I talk to, I'm telling to get on it. If I have friends who are book readers, I'm like, read the books. I am a spokesperson for your guys' universe. I've said this in other videos, but growing up a comic book fan and getting to see what has happened with comics, anytime that there is a rabid, passionate fan base that is getting something on the level that, like, I get with all of my comic book movies, that gets me excited. That makes me want to get involved, and that makes me want to just tell the world. Like, if people don't know about Shadow and Bone, know about Shadow and Bone. Watch this show. Read those books. It's just a great, great property. I'm so glad I got to experience it with a whole group of you that have read the books and been able to help me with all the things that I don't know. So those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on the show. I don't want to say anything else. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So if you haven't watched the show or you're in the process of watching the show, don't go any further than this. I do want to talk a couple spoilers, and that's what we're going to do right now. One, then these are mostly just spoilers and things that, like, popped and I was like, oh, damn, I didn't see that coming. First and foremost, Baghra being Kirigan's mom. Didn't see that coming, and I thought it was a really interesting thing to kind of tie into, because, you have Baghra, who is looking out for Alina, who is part of this plan that Kirigan has, and the other aspect to Kirigan finding out that the Darkling is, in fact, the Black Heretic, the guy who centuries ago created the Fold. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, you knew that he had the same powers as the guy who created the Fold, but, like, never in a million years was I thinking he was the Black Heretic, because, throughout the story, they kind of mentioned the fact that, like, long periods of time, things, all of this stuff happened long, long, long ago. So to find out that both Kirigan and Baghra are immortal to a degree, and the way that Baghra is kind of looking after Kirigan, but also looking after Alina and trying to stop Kirigan because she knows he's up to no good. It's one of those things where the whole show, I was like, I know Ben Barnes is up to no good. I just don't know what about the no good he's up to. And when you get that reveal that, like, he's trying to expand the Fold, that I wasn't necessarily shocked by. But I was shocked that he was the Black Heretic. I was like, blew my hair back, man. And then you get to the end, where that sequence, where they go through the Fold, and he's using Alina. Like, the way that they're able to enhance each other's powers just by being near each other, and then when you tie in these sacred creatures, I mean, that stag that they end up killing, talk about killing a man. Like, that stag was so beautiful. When they killed it, I was on the verge of tears. I was like, when Alina finally figured out, like, no, there's a different way. I can get the power without killing it. And then Kirigan and Co show up and do kill it. I was so upset. But, like I said, that visual of the stag antlers in Alina's, like, necklace that's embedded into her body, really, really cool visual. But the way that he ends up using her as kind of like this beam where it's like he's in control and she creates literally a tunnel through the fold, like, that was gorgeous. And that whole finale sequence going through the fold, the way that Alina, is able to break free, get the use of her powers, engulf Kirigan in the fold. And he mentions, like, he doesn't go in there because, like, the Volcra are like drawn right to him, and when he gets trapped in the fold and the Volcra pounce, I sat there slack-jawed. I was like, we're not killing Ben Barnes. Like, don't kill Ben Barnes. Like, he's so good. I need more of him. And then you see him emerge from the fold. I was legit cheering. I was like, yes, Ben Barnes is still alive, and that means he's so much more powerful than we think. And then to see the Volcra come out of the fold and change into some larger two-legged creature, I can't wait to see where that leads us next season. And it was funny. I've told a few people about the show, and one of them was like that whole bit with Kirigan. Like, if he could bring the Volcra outside of the fold, why didn't he just do that from the beginning? Again, this is one of those things where you guys tell me, but it felt like him getting his powers charged up by Alina, and being on death's door, being attacked by these Volcra almost enhanced his abilities or pushed them someplace that he couldn't before. Like, I don't think he could have brought the Volcra out. But, like, now it feels like he's evolved in some capacity. So if that's true, please don't spoil anything, but give me more of that if you know anything about that. But the visual and the sequence itself, I was like, so dope, man. That whole finale episode was great. And unlike Game of Thrones, where the penultimate is always the best episode, this show, continuous up all the way to that ending, which blew my hair back, and I was like, whoa. And the other thing, too, that I love is when you start to find out about Kirigan's past, how he created the fold, how all that happened. Really love that stuff. And then finding out that the Volcra are actually humans, and that's why they, like, are attracted to him, because they hate him so much. Like, that in and of itself, and again, if you read the books, tell me some more about this, but it feels like the reason that the Volcra, like, immediately go for him is because they hate him because he created them or turned them into this. And they started to show one of the transformations happen, and then they cut away, and I was like, ooh, Netflix, give them more money, because I wanted to see that full transformation because it looked crazy. But that whole concept and everything around the fold and Kirigan's character, I just thought that stuff was so interesting. And then the stuff with, like I said, the Six of Crows, the things that just popped for me. I mean, that whole sequence with Jesper, when he shoots that Grisha 3 times in a row in the same spot, I was like, dude, that's so smart. And, like, look how it's affecting and wearing on him. Like, that stuff was awesome. I loved how they tried to catch Alina. Like, that was their whole mission, the whole series. Is like, we gotta catch Alina, and we'll get like $1 million, dollars or whatever the currency is in Ravka or whatever spot that they're in. But like, I loved how, like, they try to go for her. She gets away. There's a double. That whole bit, staging, choreography of the sequence, and there's so many people in that palace. The way they move in and out. That whole bit was awesome. And then to watch Jesper break off with that stable boy we talked about, get into some physicality stuff, finish with that and be like, oh crap, I got a job to do. Go back out, and then you just see Alina get right into your carriage and hide in the luggage compartment. I was like, that's genius. And it was like the one break that Jesper needed in the show, and I loved that. And I loved seeing Alina's powers. Alina's powers are so freaking cool, man. Like I said, when Kirigan can just suck the light out and she's able to just restore it all, and as she charges up, that stuff was so cool. And her inside the fold, like, if this series does lead us to destroying the fold, which, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this is what the season was gonna do, is destroy the fold, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. What happens now? So I'm glad the fold didn't get destroyed, but if that happens, I can't wait to see what the visual looks like. Because that tunnel that she ends up creating, even though Kirigan is kind of controlling it, like the way the light and the like runs through the clouds, and you got those lightning kind of blasts running above it and stuff. Like, it was just such a beautiful spectacle type thing to see. And like I said, that whole finale, I mean, this show ended at its highest moment for me. Like, it was so freaking good, man. Like, I loved everything. Like I said, the Six of Crows sequences, anytime they're on a mission, I mean, watching Inej, do a little hand-to-hand, get injured and come back and figure out how to fight, like, all that stuff is working, and I'm just so pumped to see where this world goes, and pumped maybe to dip my toe into the books. I'm not going to promise anybody, because I do struggle with reading full-on books because of time. Obviously, it's been almost 2 weeks since the show came out. I'm just now talking about it. My time crunch is crazy, but it certainly has me interested in wanting to take a look, or at least listen maybe on an audio book. But I love this show. I am done talking. Those are the only things I really wanted to cover spoiler-wise. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. What do you guys think of this show? First off, my Grishaverse, my book, folks. What do you guys think? Feel free to be spoilery. Just kind of mark it if you're going to talk spoilers, so that if people are browsing, they know to kind of skip over your comments. But what were you thinking, man? What did you love? What was your favorite moment? What are your favorite characters? Did your favorite characters from the books line up with the show? Do you like characters in the show more than the books? How accurate is everything to the books? Now that we have a little bit of space to kind of talk freely, give me all of your thoughts about the show. What did you like? What did you dislike? And if you haven't watched the show, or you haven't read the books, and this is, kind of your way in, first, if you haven't read the books but you've watched the show, what do you think? Is this something that's up your alley? Is this something that you're interested in? If you are a book reader, does this now make you interested in the books? And what characters and things were you most liking in the show? And if you haven't watched the show, I hope you skipped over that little spoiler section. If you haven't watched the show, has me talking about it enticed you? Is it something that's on your radar? What are you guys thinking, man? Good, bad, indifferent on Shadow and Bone on Netflix? All that goes down below in the comments section. As I said, if you're going to go spoilery, by all means, just label it so that people know. But I really look forward to talking to all you guys down there. Some of the best conversations I've had as of late have come out of this show and this fan base, so I really look forward to talking to you guys. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman as we wait for however long we have to wait to get to Season 2. But you want to be here for whenever that comes, whenever we talk about that, or just, you dig what I'm doing. You want to give the Seaman a little birthday gift? I could use a birthday pick-me-up, man. You want to pick me up on my birthday? Show a little love? Please, come join Seamaniac Nation by jumping over there, man. Hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the Seamans, Cinema, sit down. Oh, it's my birthday. I can't believe I'm 35. I've been the Seaman, and I am signing off. Peace! Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you haven't, you want to come join that Seamaniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.